Right. Something guys here. Good morning. How's everyone doing? Hope you're well. From whatever it is that you're joining us from, this beautiful 24th day of July 2023. Good to see a lot of people back here, also from the daily analysis, also from last week. Good to see you all here. I hope you had a good start to this week, but we're really glad that you could join us. So John is my name for the sake of guys who are new here. My trader is Afriforex. I'm here alongside Mitch. Mitch, how are you doing? How's your week?
Good. Weekend was all right. At least looking forward to the new week. So at least I know there's a lot of news that's coming out this week. So hopefully there should be good opportunities.
All right. So we're going to get started. We're going to jump straight into it. And remember, guys, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the Q&A section and also the chat box. We'll be looking at them, especially the ones on the Q&A section towards the tail end of this webinar. So make sure that you send your questions in there. So we're going to jump straight into it. We're going to start off by looking at what we had last week, real quick, before we end up looking at what the situation is going to be looking like this week. So you can see that there's been quite a number of changes that have happened moving into this week, but you can see some of them, like CHS, still remains strong from last week, still a strong 7 from last week. CAD last week was pretty weak. This week, maybe we might see some strength coming in on that, but we'll have to wait and see. But you can definitely see the New Zealand dollar still becoming weaker from a 1 to a -5. The yen going from neutral weakness we're going to be expecting this week, and you also can end up seeing that the US dollar last week we were expecting to see weakness on it, but this week it's more or less like a neutral currency pair. But we'll be coming to this. We'll just end up briefly looking at the currency pairs that we had last week and what happened, and then we'll end up jumping into the currency pairs for this week. So starting off is the Great British Pound against the US dollar. Now, for this one, last week, we wanted to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. On Monday, price was somewhere within this region right here. And we're expecting maybe to see the market possibly break this region to the upside based on how the market was coming up the previous week. And unfortunately, it's like the sellers or the buyers within this region did slow down and the sellers did start to come in. We're also expecting to possibly see we could get the pullback coming back in within this region right here for possibly the buys possibly lifting off this region to the upside. But it seems like the whole week the market was actually on the pullback phase. Maybe this week we could possibly find the market lifting off here to the upside, technically speaking. But unfortunately, based on the overall numbers, on the overall correlation, this could possibly also be a currency pair that could give issues, and you could find the market possibly holding within this particular region right here. So unfortunately, for that reason, we'll be walking away from that one. So the next one is the Australian dollar against the US dollar. So for this one, we wanted to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. And you can see the 3 regions right there that we had pointed out and what we were expecting possibly see the markets do. But you can see that on Monday, price was within this region. Unfortunately, we couldn't get the buyers lifting off this area here. It did seem like they came in within this region here. And I think we did point this out on one of the live trading sessions. I think it must have been maybe on Thursday. After the buyers showed up, we wanted to see how the sellers were going to react. And if we did get a hold within here, maybe we could have looked for the buying opportunity, similar to what we had illustrated somewhere within this region right here. But unfortunately, it seems like the market did break to the downside and hold. Could find the market coming back in within here, then maybe you could find the buyers working out. But unfortunately, also based on the numbers, the overall numbers, could find that it could be a kind of pair that could give issues. So for that reason, we will also be walking away from that one this week. So moving on into the next one, this is the Great British Pound against the Canadian dollar. So for this one, we also wanted to see whether we could have gotten some buys. Monday price was within this region here, within a seller's region. So we were either expecting to get the market to break the upside, which unfortunately couldn't do. And you can see that the market came back in within here, couldn't get anything to tell us to look for buying opportunities there. And neither could we end up getting something to tell us to look for buying opportunities within this region right here. Lots of strength that the Canadian dollar pair were showing last week. Unfortunately, the weakness we wanted to see couldn't really come in. So moving on into the next one, this is the Australian dollar against the Canadian dollar. Now for this one, we wanted to see whether we could have also gotten some buying opportunities. So you can see that the previous week, the market had come up aggressive. we're either expecting to see these buyers continue rallying up, but it's like they got somewhere within this region and disappeared. The market pulled back in, couldn't really get anything here, but this is almost similar to, I think, the Australian dollar against the US dollar, where we saw the market come up aggressive, wanted to see the hold within here. If the market did hold, then you can't see what we illustrated could have possibly ended up working out, but unfortunately, the market broke to the downside. Unfortunately, that meant that the buying opportunities within that region were over. So could find the market maybe pulling back in deeper, but you also could find this week the market could also possibly be ranging within this region. Because remember that the Australian dollar and the Canadian dollar are both neutral pairs. So they could possibly be giving some sort of issues. So we'll be walking away from that one. So the next one is the euro against the Swiss franc. The Swiss franc pairs were actually the best performing currency pairs last week. So you can see this one, the 3 years we had pointed out, and what we're expecting to possibly end up seeing. This one did actually even start moving on Monday, just came down within this region. Like the sales just started working out on Monday, and you can see that from Thursday moving on, it's like the buyers and the sellers were just fighting within this region right here. But unfortunately, it's not really something that we're going to be watching out for, because you could find that this could possibly end up carrying on, and you could find the market possibly moving sideways. So unfortunately, it's not a currency pair that we will be watching out this week, but it did really end up performing quite well. So similar situation with the Swiss franc against the Japanese yen. So for this one last week, watching out to see whether we could have gotten some buys. Can't really see the three regions that we had pointed out and what we're expecting. So on Monday, prices within this region held, broke to the upside, but you can see that the pullback came in later. This was more or less like on Friday, bounced off that region, and you can see how aggressively the market took off. So more or less what we did expect within this region, and we illustrated that. So you just need to be patient. Make sure you wait for the breach. Make sure you also always wait for the pullback so that you don't end up getting wrong-footed. So last but not least, we had the New Zealand dollar against the Swiss franc. So for this one, we're expecting to see whether we could have gotten some sales. So you can see the 4 areas that we had. It's not very common to end up having 4 regions, but sometimes based on what we're seeing on the charts, it does end up necessitating us to do that. So on Monday, price was here. We're either expecting this bar to react and could have gotten the price coming back in within that region there for the sell, or maybe the market possibly coming down. It got some sort of a pullback here, could have looked for the sales. Fortunately, that didn't happen, but consider the market broke this region to the downside, pulled back in within there. This was on Wednesday, but you also can see that later on in the week on Thursday, Friday, price did actually end up coming back in within here. So more or less like 2 selling opportunities that did come in within that region and this region right here. But it definitely does seem like there's a fight that's going on between the buyers and the sellers within here. Possibly could be something to do, definitely to do with the correlation and the numbers of the New Zealand dollar and the Swiss franc. So you could find the market possibly moving sideways this week. So for that reason, this is definitely something that we're not going to be looking at. Because on the other hand, you could find that the market could continue to move, and you might actually not end up getting very many pullbacks. So it might be a bit difficult to end up jumping in on this trade. So for that reason, we'll be walking away from it. But technically speaking, if you do get any sell, if you do manage, well, you could jump in and see what could possibly end up happening. So that's pretty much it for all the review pairs. So those are the ones that we had last week that unfortunately didn't make it onto our watch list this week. So this is the watch list, more or less, for this week, based on the numbers that we do have here. Remember that we mix and match up the sells versus the neutrals, the buys versus the neutrals. We don't mix and match up the sells versus the buys like we do on the daily analysis. So make sure that you take note of that. And of course, we also don't end up mixing and matching up things that are on the same side. So remember that the Dow Jones and gold, those are also standalone. So whichever side they end up being, those ones, you just take them for what they are. So hopefully you have taken notes of that. So I guess, Mitch, if you're ready, you want to get started on gold this week?
Yeah.
Right.
So on gold last week, our bias was to look for selling opportunities, but we'd had, at least we were within some sort of support and resistance area right there that we did mention. If the price did end up holding above that particular area, we would be looking for buying opportunities. And you can see, seems like it was around Tuesday that the market did manage to breach to the upside, and that's a proper breach that we did end up wanting to see. So ideally, the bias right now has changed, and we will be looking for buying opportunities. So the market did end up going up, giving us the pullback. But right now, you can even see where we are. We're so close within this particular support and resistance area right here. So we'll still be looking for buying opportunities, or at least we will be looking for buying opportunities this week. You can see the fact that the price has managed to go to the upside. We are expecting this pullback, and we can see we are within some sort of support and resistance area right here. The sellers do seem to be slowing down, so we could potentially end up seeing some buying opportunity coming in within this particular area. But we are fully aware that the price can also still end up coming to the downside. So we could end up seeing, if it does end up breaking and holding below this particular support and resistance area, chances are we could be coming back to this main SNR level, because this is a major level, even based on the daily time frame. So we could even see the price pulling back towards that area before we do see the price going to the upside. So that's if the price ends up holding below this particular support and resistance area. But right now, the fact that we're still possibly holding above, you can watch how these sellers are coming down. And when we see them actually slowing down and the price actually holds within this particular area, we could end up seeing a buying opportunity working out from this SNR level. So ideally, that's the buzz. Right now, we could end up seeing the market possibly even giving some sort of probe even within there. Before we do end up seeing the price possibly going to the upside. So possibly be looking for these three areas. Then let's, John, could you highlight the levels so that at least we know what levels we're looking for. So the red SNR is the line in the sand for us now. So if the price breaks and holds below this area right here, so if we do see the price breaking and holding below, then at that point in time, we look for sales. But as long as the price is holding above the red SNR, the buyers are still. So just take note of that and our buyers for gold for this week. Yep, so I guess we can move on to the next. So now on the US 30, the Dow Jones, now this pair seems to be moving a lot at the beginning of the week. You can see the price did end up breaking above this particular SNR level that we did end up having last week. And the price just continued to go to the upside. You can see there was a small SNR level here where the market even just held within that particular location. So which did give us another opportunity on Tuesday. So the market just continued running to the upside, not necessarily giving us a pullback. But you can clearly see our bias this week is still to look for these buying opportunities. But you can see right now we're back, or at least we're within an area where there's sellers, and we never want to look for buying opportunities within a seller's area. So we need one of two things to happen. Either this price needs to come down lower, could end up seeing some sort of probe coming in within this particular area before you do end up seeing a buying opportunity coming in. Because remember, we always need a pullback. Now, this pullback can come in within this SNR level. This is the first area that we do have, but the price can still come all the way down towards this extreme look SNR level where we do have the red SNR, where it could end up reacting within that location. But just because we've put these three areas, that doesn't mean that there are no other levels in between. You can see even the level that had pointed out right here. It does seem to be also some sort of small SNR, possibly on the 1 hour time frame. So just watch out for such areas. So if you do see the price reacting from that location, giving us some sort of probe, or at least the seller slowing down, we could end up seeing a buying opportunity coming in. But right now, if the price does end up doing what it did last week, because it seems like sometimes these prices do end up just breaking this area to the upside. And if we do see a proper breach to the upside, and the price pulls back and we do see the price holding above, then that should give us a very nice buying opportunity as well. So it just depends on how the market reacts within the sellers' areas. If the sellers give us a pullback, it's very good for us, because at least it will give us a discount for us to look for the buy. But if the price breaches to the upside, that means the sellers are not there, the buyers are still strong, and that means we can still continue looking for those buying opportunities. So hope that's clear, and you take note of those levels as well. So yeah.
Right. It seems like the Dow Jones really rallied up last week, quite aggressive. It's the whole week, hardly any pullback.
Yeah.
I'll experience something similar this week, hopefully.
Yeah, let's see. Hopefully it might give us that pullback, because at least to give us more risk to reward. You know, if we take the more conservative trade, the one above here, we're never really too sure on how far to target. So that's usually an issue. But at least on these pullbacks, we know when the price approaches this seller's area again, we should have an area we can manage.
Yep. And also inciting at least some sellers to come in, because definitely right now, it's like everyone is definitely looking to see whether you can get some buys. But at least if we get some sellers getting invited, better. So let's see what happens on the Dow. So guess we can now get started on the currency pairs. So we'll start off by mixing and matching up the yen pairs with everything on the neutral, move on to the New Zealand dollar, do the same, the euro, everything on the neutral. And then last but not least, we finish off with the Swiss franc pairs with everything on the neutral. So the first one off is the US dollar against the Japanese yen. Now for this one, last week we wanted to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities. You can see the three regions right there that we did end up pointing out. So on Monday, price was somewhere within here. Of course, this wasn't a good area to end up looking for your selling opportunities. So we did either want to see the market break to the downside and hold, then maybe on the pullback trend, see whether we could get the sell. Unfortunately, we couldn't get that. Consider the market rallied up more or less from midweek last week, just coming up back within there. Unfortunately, we couldn't get anything to tell us to look for selling opportunities within that particular region right there. So this week, unfortunately, we're not going to be looking to see whether we can get selling opportunities. So we're going to be trying to see whether we can get some buying opportunities. So the levels are more or less the same, just that we switched them up. Remember that the red SNR last week was higher up within this region and this yellow one was down here. So we're going to be trying to see either if we can't get the buying opportunities, especially if the market attempts to come back in within here and cannot, then we could possibly end up trying to see whether we could get buys here. So you could find maybe some good buying opportunities possibly working out, maybe even from midweek. We'll have to see what happens with that. But you can also end up expecting maybe the price to come back in. There's a possibility it could come back in within this region right here. There's also an SNR somewhere within there. But generally, the market comes in somewhere as close as possible within this region here. You could potentially try and see whether you could grab some buying opportunities. And there's a possibility you could find an aggressive push to the upside, even maybe the market doing some sort of spikes within this region as it attempts to go up higher. Maybe if that doesn't happen down here, maybe somewhere within here, we have the interest rate decisions that are going to be coming out this week for the US. So on Wednesday, maybe you could find something happening on this one. So just make sure that you watch out for those three areas. Remember the red SNR at the bottom, in case the market breaks out to the downside, then unfortunately, there will be no trade for us unless maybe the market does end up coming back up the upside. So the next one, this is the Great British Pound against the Japanese yen. So this is a new entrant on our watch list this week. We're going to be trying to see whether we can get some buying opportunities on this one. So do watch out for these three regions right here. If we can end up taking note of them. You can see that the market was in some sort of a range, more or less like last week. Right now, the market is just at the top of the range. Of course, this being a range, the best buying opportunity still does end up remaining down here. So if you get the market coming back in within that region, you could potentially try and see whether you could get your buys here. Make sure that you manage your trade somewhere within this region right here, because you never know whether these sellers are going to come back in again and push you back down to your entry. So watch out for that. But remember the red SNR as well. The market breaks this region to the downside, there will be no trade for us. Now, on the other hand, if we get the market possibly going up, coming back in within here, we could also look for buying opportunities here. If we get a breach of structure, you can see how aggressive the buyers came in last week. Seems like there was something up with, I think, the yen pairs. Because even when we're doing the review, you could see like some of them, like CHF on Friday. There were these aggressive pushes that did actually end up happening. So based on that, if the pullback doesn't come back in all the way to within here, could potentially also watch out for somewhere within this region right here. So you can see the aggressive push of the buyers. Let's see the sellers can struggle down. If the market doesn't come back in all the way to within here, there's a possibility it might actually just tap somewhere within here. You could potentially look for your buys here. Remember that you also need to go down to a smaller time frame. So this is what the story is looking like on the 4 hour. But maybe when the market comes back in within these regions, you need to go down to the 1 hour time frame and read those pullbacks. So if the buyers start to come in within here, you could look for your buys there. If not, remember the last area is somewhere within this particular region right here. So hopefully you have taken note of that, and of course, what the plan is going to be looking like when the market starts to move within those regions. So the next one is the Australian dollar against the Japanese yen. So this is also a new entrant on our watch list. But you can see some good correlation that's happening amongst the yen pairs. So you can see that this one is also going up. Maybe some sort of a choppy, messy range going on here. Maybe some sort of an upward channel could be happening. But generally, we're within a region where we do have sellers. And you can see that the buyers are down within this particular region. So this one is almost similar to the Great British Pound against the Japanese yen. Let's see if we can get the pullback coming in within here. You could look for a price action signal there. Could be a pin bar, could be a probe, hopefully. But you can see that generally, since the market has probed within here, then it tells us that there are generally buyers within this area. So you could time your buys there. So watch out for that. Could target all the way at the top, but remember that you will still need to watch out for this region right here. Definitely a region where we do have some sort of sellers who could give you issues. Now, if we get the market breaking above here, coming back in, maybe on some sort of a pullback, you could look for the buyers also within this region. Right now, if you take your buy, you're not really out of the woods yet, because you could hit the buy here. Yeah, you could possibly put your stops maybe within here, maybe survive this move going up. Still have these sellers who could give you issues. I think generally if the market maybe breaks above here and pulls back in, even if it doesn't come back in all the way till within here, as long as we at least get past this region here, because you can see that there was a sharp reversal back within this region right here, which tells us that there are definitely sellers within this region. So wait and see. We can break above that. Hopefully the market can pull back slower than this, back within this region. I think you should be good to go on your buying opportunity within here. You could easily end up targeting all the way at the top there. So make sure that you do watch out for those two options. And like we always keep on pointing out, make sure that you always do trade with a stop loss no matter what you do. So moving on into the last yen pair. This is the Canadian dollar against the Japanese yen. So for this one yesterday, last week, we did actually end up having it. We're watching out to see whether we could have gotten some selling opportunities. And you can see the three regions right there that we had pointed out. So price was somewhere here last week on Monday. Wanted to see the market break to the downside, pull back in, and then possibly look for the sell. But you can see that generally within this region, the buyers did give issues. The market pulled back in within here. We're possibly also expecting that, but unfortunately, we couldn't get anything to tell us to look for sell. So unfortunately, the selling opportunities on this one last week are nowhere to be seen. So this week, the plot has switched. So we're going to be trying to see whether we can get some buying opportunities. The levels are more or less the same, just switching them up, bringing the red SNR down and the yellow one, taking it to the top, but it's more or less the same region. So we'll be watching out to see whether we can get the market giving us a price action signal. Yeah, could possibly try and see whether we could get some buys. Let's see if we can get the pullback coming in within here. So at least also in terms of your stops, to make your stop losses leaner, because if you hit the buy here, even if you want to be aggressive, your stops will still have to be here. So at least if the market comes down lower, you could actually end up shaving off quite a number of pips on your stop loss, which means that on the reward side, your risk to reward will become much better. So you could possibly end up waiting for that. And generally, you also want to get your buying opportunities as close as possible within here, because within this region, you can't see that the sellers have reacted off here before, and they're definitely the ones who are giving issues. So at least if you get your buy somewhere as close as possible within here, if the market does end up coming back in within this region right here, and you start to get issues, you could actually end up managing your trade at that point in time, and at least you'd have gotten quite a number of pips coming up. So you could potentially end up watching out for that. Now, there's also a possibility if these prices are not good enough, price could be coming back in within here. Could possibly try and see whether you could get the market doing something like that. It's also a possibility. Also quite a number of levels within here, like what we point out, like a 1 hour level is a possibility price could also be coming back in within here. So when if price doesn't come back in all the way to within here, make sure that you watch out for this particular region right here. It's just like what we pointed out on the Great British Pound against the Japanese yen. So you could find the market coming back in somewhere as close as possible within here or somewhere within here, and you still could find the buying opportunity for it. So hopefully you have taken note of that. And remembering the red SNR, if the market breaks this region to the downside, then unfortunately we'll have to wait and see if price can come back to the upside before we actually end up looking for buying opportunities. So hopefully you've taken note of what the plan is on all the yen pairs. So right now we can't move on to the New Zealand dollar pairs, mix and match them up with everything on the neutral. So starting off with the New Zealand dollar against the US dollar. Mitch?
Yeah. So now on this currency pair, last week we did have it, and our bias was to look for buying opportunities. Remember, there was this huge move to the upside, and we did want a pullback to come in, possibly within either this SNR or this SNR right here. And you can see the price did continue coming down lower, not necessarily giving us much of an opportunity to look for those buyers. So the price did continue coming down lower. Now, this week, the fundamentals have changed, or at least our watch list has changed based on correlation, and we are going to be looking for selling opportunities this week. So we have adjusted the levels, but right now you can see the price has come down, but we're back within that buyers area that we did end up expecting these buyers to end up reacting. But especially, we'll end up looking at this based on a number of New Zealand dollar pairs, especially on a higher time frame. You'll notice that this move to the upside and the price coming down, this ends up being a very huge probe, this huge thing right here, especially on a higher time frame. So because this right here is a very major support and resistance level. So our bias this week is to look for buys. And if this is some sort of probe, and you can see those who have come for the intermediate class will see that this is 100% pullback. So right now we want to see these buyers coming up and we want to see them struggling. So if we can see the buyers coming up within this particular area, possibly giving us some sort of probe, but we also want to see them coming up much weaker, especially in comparison to the way they came up this first time. And we see the price holding below this particular area, then we should be able to look for a selling opportunity there. Now, since we're back within this buyers area, there's still the possibility that the buyers may not necessarily have any type of reaction. So we could end up seeing the price actually giving us some sort of breach to the downside, and we do need a proper breach. So if the price gives us that pullback, the price is holding below, then we should be able to continue looking for selling opportunities as well. But right now, we do need to see how these buyers are going to react. Hopefully, they can end up coming up a bit higher, possibly within this SNR for us to look for the sells a bit higher up, especially due to the fact that it is a probe. But we do want to see some sort of slowdown here, because if you just put a pending order right here, your stop loss would have to be so wide within that particular area, and that risk to reward would not make sense. So watch to see it, as John had mentioned, watch how the market pulls up within this area, possibly within the 1 hour time frame. Wait to see them struggling to go to the upside before you're able to look for those sells. So hope the game plan is clear on the New Zealand dollar against the US dollar. So I guess we can go to the next New Zealand dollar pair. So here, this is the British pound against the New Zealand dollar, brand new entered on our watch list. And you can see it's pretty clear right here. The structure of the market, it does seem to be in a range. You can see the bottom of the range right here and the top right there. So overall, since we are going to be looking for buying opportunities on this pair, as usual, would rather look for those buying opportunities at the bottom area right here. So we wait to see how the market, right? Since right now you can see these sellers do seem to be reacting. We want to see whether or not they will be seeing some sort of reaction within this particular area, especially if the sellers do slow down and the buyers do come in aggressive. We might end up seeing the market reacting within that location, especially if the sellers don't necessarily have enough strength to actually continue going down. However, if this level is breached to the downside and the price continues going down, chances are we could be coming back all the way to the main buyers area right there at the bottom before we're able to look for those buying opportunities. Now, within our range, there are multiple things that can end up happening. And especially one good thing is when the levels are actually broken. So if you do end up finding that the price is actually able to break this area to the upside, I think those pullbacks that come in and you do get confirmation that the price is holding above, these end up being very nice opportunities, because at least at that point in time, you know the buyers are fully taking control and the sellers have nothing else that they can do. So if you do see the price going and reaching above, you can be able to look for that conservative buy, because those ones do work within ranges. But since we're still within the range, let's see if we can get these buying opportunities within these buyers areas. So watch out to see how the market first reacts in this area. Once if that level doesn't hold, then chances are we could be coming all the way down towards this buyers area. But remember, if you are going to take a sell, just be careful about it. You never know whether or not or how far the price could go down to, or whether or not this is just something to incite and you find the price actually breaking this area to the upside. So just be cautious about that on the British pound against the New Zealand dollar. So we can move on to the next New Zealand dollar pair. Here we do have the Australian dollar against the New Zealand dollar. Now, brand new entry on our watch list. And on this kind of pair, our bias here is to look for buying opportunities. Remember, the New Zealand dollar is weak. So right now, we do want to look for buying opportunities. And you can see the price did end up coming down, or at least it was on its way down. Some slowdown happened. And remember, when the slowdowns happen, they do transition to some sort of range before the buyers do start coming into the upside. So right now, we can clearly see the market is starting to move up. So we do want to look for buying opportunities, but you can see we're back within this very strong sellers area. And you can see the last time the price was here, the market took it all the way down towards this particular location. So right now, we do end up expecting some sort of reaction. So this is no surprise that the market is reacting right now. But we want to see how the price possibly comes down. So hopefully we can end up getting the price coming all the way down within this particular area. And especially if we do see them slower, especially compared to the first time that they came in, we see them struggling within this particular area, then we should be able to look for those buying opportunities. But alternatively, you can also see we do have minor support and resistance areas as well. You can see as the price was going to the upside, we did have an area of support and resistance. So you don't know whether or not the price is actually going to react in here. So if you do see the price possibly jumping to the upside, breaking this area to the upside and holding above, then we should be able to continue looking for buyers. At least at that point in time, these sellers right here who did end up pushing the market and who are still holding the market will be taken out. And at least at that point in time, the buyers should be much safer at that point in time. So hope that's clear, at least on the game plan of what we're looking for on the Australian dollar against the New Zealand dollar for the buyers. Let's wait to see how that pullback comes in and watch out for these minor levels also on the 1 hour time frame. So moving on to the next New Zealand dollar pair we do have, this is the New Zealand dollar against the Canadian dollar. Similar situation with the New Zealand dollar against the US dollar. They do seem to be correlated quite a bit. Because remember, last week we were looking for buying opportunities based on this move to the upside that did end up happening. We wanted to see how that pullback was going to come in. But you can clearly see all the levels that we did have, the prices just broke to the downside and holding within those locations. You can see right now we're within the extreme area that we did have last week. So there was no buying opportunity that it did end up giving us. But the fact that this bias has changed, we will now be looking for selling opportunities. Now, it's a similar situation with the New Zealand dollar against the US dollar. This move to the upside, there's a possibility that that's just a huge probe that did end up happening. So the fact that this seller's area could potentially be still holding, because you can see even as the price did end up coming to the downside from this particular area, you can see on the pullback, the price was just holding below this particular area. So that just confirmed that that's a very strong support and resistance area. So that means if we do want to look for the selling opportunities, right now, us being within an area where there are buyers is not a good idea to look for those sells. So the main thing we want to see first is either giving us a pullback. So possibly we could end up getting the price approaching this particular area, giving us some sort of probe. If the price ends up holding below, then we should be able to look for those selling opportunities. But there's also a possibility that these buyers might not necessarily do anything. And if we do see the price breaking this area to the downside, and when I say breaking, we need a convincing move to the downside. And don't feel like the market has actually run away. Remember, we always want to see if we can end up getting that pullback. Because it doesn't matter how far the market goes. We've seen many times that the market seems to come all the way down and the next move, it goes all the way back up. So we always need to get that confirmation. So if you do see the price giving us some sort of breach to the downside and a hold below, then we should be able to look for selling opportunities as well on the New Zealand dollar against Canadian dollar. So just take note of the correlation that's happening with all these New Zealand dollar pairs. If you realize they're all within areas where they're buyers, or at least the opposite thing of what we want to do. In this case, we want to sell, but we're within a buyer's area. But on the British pound against the New Zealand dollar, and the Australian dollar against the New Zealand dollar, we're within areas of sellers, yet we also want to look for buying opportunities. So just watch out for that correlation. So if those levels are broken, then you could have very nice trading opportunities on the New Zealand dollar pairs, or you could end up seeing pullbacks coming in on all of them. So take note of that, of these pairs.
All right. So I hope guys have taken note of what the plan is on the New Zealand dollar pairs. So I think we can end up moving on to the next ones, which are the euro pairs, mixing and matching them up with everything on the neutral. And remember, guys, the good thing about the weekly swing is that even if things are not very clear, you can always go and rewatch this stuff on YouTube, because we end up putting it there. So at least you can still end up referring to this information for the remainder of the week. So make sure that you can definitely hop on there. You can even definitely end up increasing the speed and definitely looking for the region or the area where something wasn't clear. So make sure that you also end up taking note of that. And remember to end up subscribing and liking when you're also there. So moving on into the euro pairs, the euro against the US dollar. Now, for this one last week, we're trying to see whether we could have gotten some buying opportunities. You can see the three regions right there that we had ended up pointing out. So on Monday, price was somewhere within this region right here. We're expecting maybe price to possibly end up rallying up, because you can see the previous week price was coming up quite aggressively. So we're expecting maybe to see price break up the upside of this region, maybe on the pullback attempt to look for those buying opportunities, which unfortunately couldn't happen. You can see that the market was on the pullback, came back in within here, but you can see that unfortunately price couldn't lift off this region last week. So it started off low, picked up a bit of steam later on in the week, then can slow down again, and then today seems like the market has really pushed itself quite aggressively into this region right here. So the plan is more or less the same. Let's see if this week, hopefully we'll get the market lifting off this region right here. But you will definitely need to see some sort of a price action signal. In fact, the plan would be more or less similar to what we wanted to see last week. So you could find maybe the market attempting to break to the downside. If it doesn't, and let's say the market comes back in and holds above here, then you could definitely end up trying to see whether you could get your buys here. Make sure that you manage somewhere at the top there, but also maybe some problem area, maybe somewhere within this region here. Can definitely see that there's some sort of a small SNR within there. So just make sure that you really watch out for that. Maybe additional buys for guys who know how to scale it, especially if the market breaks above here. There's this region right here where you could possibly end up trying to see whether you could actually jump in on a buy, maybe on the pullback. So just make sure that you watch out for that. Now, on the other hand, let's say this price is not good enough in the market, or the buyers need a better price, you could find the market coming back in all the way till within the red SNR at the bottom right here, but also quite a number of buyers regions. You can see, like when the market was going up here, you can see quite a number of steps going up. So you could find that maybe the market might need somewhere within this region here, or somewhere within this area right here. But ideally, the best thing is to actually make sure that you end up reading the story of the pullback in the smaller time frame when the market is coming down. So at least you will end up timing your buying opportunities quite well, and make sure that you do manage your trades also quite well as well. So the next one is the euro against the Great British Pound. So for this one, this is a new entrant on our watch list. We're going to be trying to see whether we can get some buying opportunities. You can see last week, seems like the Great British Pound was really getting hammered by the euro. Consider the market was just going up, starting off from the week before that. So this week, we're still going to be trying to see whether we can get, or rather, we're going to be trying to see whether we can get some buying opportunities, hopefully help the buyers in pushing the market up. Some sort of correlation to some extent with the euro against the US dollar. Some pullback is coming in. Let's see if we can get the market possibly coming back up within here. If we do, you could look for your buying opportunities here. And at least you also have a good idea in terms of where to end up putting your stop loss. So you could wait for that. Alternatively, there's a possibility price could be coming back in within this region right here, the red SNR, or somewhere as close as possible within there, because there's also an SNR somewhere within this region right here. You can see that the market has reacted up here before. So you could find that maybe if price doesn't come back in all the way to within this region here, which would ideally be the best area, because you can see that the bars are pushed up from there. Just watch out for this region right here. You could find that maybe the market might possibly end up lifting up off this region right here to the upside. So just make sure that you watch out for those three areas, almost four areas. And of course, remember the red SNR. If the market breaks that to the downside, then unfortunately, you have to be a bit patient. Wait and see if the market can come back to the upside. So the next one is the euro against the Australian dollar. So this is also a new entrant on our watch list. You can see the market structure is some sort of a range. The market is reacting off the top of the range, which is not something that should be surprising. This is the reason why we always make sure that you're always playing within the market structure, so at least you can time your entries quite well. And of course, right now, based on the fact that the market is in some sort of a range, the best buying opportunities still remain to be down within here, because in a range, you definitely want to get your buys as close to the bottom as possible. So there's a possibility you could find the market coming back in within this region here. If it doesn't come in all the way to within there, quite a number of regions within this area right here where you could find the market coming back in. So you could find that maybe the buyers are looking for prices somewhere within these regions right here. So also be on the lookout for that. If you do see the slowdown happening within this region right here, especially as we come closer to the bottom of the range, you could try and see whether you could read that on the smaller time frame. Then you could potentially end up timing your buying opportunities somewhere within here, even if price doesn't come in all the way to within this region. So make sure that you watch out for that. Now, on the other hand, let's say if price doesn't come back in all the way to within here, and these sellers who are coming down end up running out of steam somewhere within this region right here, you could potentially still look for your buying opportunities here. Also a buyer's region. But be a bit skeptic about this one, because especially if you end up being a bit careless with your stop loss, goodies will end up getting stopped out, especially within this region, because you might find that price might actually end up needing to spike down, possibly tapping somewhere within this region right here before it goes. So be very good, or end up really being very keen in terms of reading what exactly is happening within this region right here. So just really make sure that you really do watch out for that. There's a high possibility you could find prices spiking down just to possibly tap areas within here. Stop out maybe some late buyers who are possibly hitting buys coming up, stop losses within this region. If you end up just hitting the buy there without any good confirmation, make sure that you are well aware that you could easily end up getting stopped out as well. So hopefully you've taken note of the euro against the Australian dollar. Now the plan is going to be looking like as we move on to the last euro pair, which is the euro against the Canadian dollar. Now, for this one last week, we wanted to see whether we could get some buys. So you can see the previous week or the week before that, price was coming up. Wanted to see whether we could get the market breaking this region to the upside to continue with the buys, or possibly we could get the pullback. And you can see that the whole of last week, the market was on the pullback phase, just coming down. There weren't really any clear buying opportunity. So this week, interestingly enough, price is back in within a region where we're expecting to see whether we could get the buys. Let's see if we can get the sellers hopefully slowing down within this particular region right here. If we do end up seeing the aggression of the buyers coming in, then that might be good. Maybe price is just tapping down. Maybe it needs to tap in within regions, within these areas here. Maybe come back up. If that does end up happening and we do end up getting the market coming back in aggressively, sellers do end up struggling on their next attempt, and that needs to be very visible compared to the previous time. Then you could possibly end up attempting your buying opportunities, and you could get a good buy coming back up to the top there. So make sure that you watch out for that. That could be one option. The other option could be there's a possibility price could be coming back down within the red SNR, which is somewhere within this region right here. Definitely a key area, also visible even on the bigger time frame. But remember that there are also quite a number of levels in between. Like, for example, there's this one right here. So you could find that maybe price might actually end up coming shy of this area here, only to actually end up coming in somewhere within here. So you still could look for your buys somewhere within this area here. But the only problem you'll need to really watch out for is this area right here, because if the market can't get past this region, then you're definitely going to be running into issues. Just make sure that you manage your trade within there. So it would be best, at least if the price came in a bit lower, maybe somewhat within this region right here. But anyway, we speculate to the best of our ability. The market does end up having a mind of its own. But ideally, this is what the plan is going to be looking like based on what we do expect. So hopefully we take a note of that. So I guess we can look at the last set of currency pairs, which are the CHF pairs. Mix and match those up with everything on the neutral. So we can start off with the US dollar against the Swiss franc. So Mitch, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, so this is a brand new entry on our watch list. And here our bias is to look for selling opportunities. Now remember, the Swiss franc is the counter currency. I think it's a counter currency for most of these pairs. So we'll be looking for sells, and that indicates that the Swiss franc is strong. So the fact that we want to look for sells, we can see the way the price didn't manage to come down lower. Did end up approaching some sort of support and resistance area where the sellers clearly seem to have slowed down. You can see even the next attempt to come down, very weak, and the buyers do seem to be coming in right now, which is definitely what we want to see. So since we want to see that pullback coming in right now, hopefully we can end up getting this price possibly approaching this particular area, giving us some sort of probe within that particular location for us to look for some sort of selling opportunities. So once we do end up seeing these buyers slowing down. Now, since we do want to see the pullback, now this pullback can come up within this particular area and or can even go all the way to the extreme particular support and resistance area. Can see this is a major SNR level, especially based on the daily time frame as well. So you could even see the market possibly approaching that particular area, seeing the price holding below that particular location, could end up also seeing some sort of selling opportunities within there. So we do need a pullback to come in. So hopefully it does end up coming in one of those locations. But right now, we want to see at least the buyers slowing down within this particular location, because you can see even though the buyers came in very aggressive to the upside, you can see their pullback. It might end up not necessarily going to the upside. So watch how this market approaches, or at least approaches this first SNR area, especially on the 1 hour time frame. Now, be aware if the price does end up running away, you could end up finding, because I know we have a lot of high impact news, which we'll end up having a look at after. But if we do see the price possibly breaking this area to the to the downside and holding below, I think then we should be able to continue with those sells as well. But for right now, we'll wait to see how these pullbacks do end up coming in, especially since these buyers right here, they won't just disappear. Most of the time, they do end up needing to at least struggle a bit before you do see the prices coming down. So just watch out for these locations and the game plan. Right now, let's see how the buyers end up attempting to go up higher. So hope that's clear on the US dollar against the Swiss franc as we move on to the next Swiss franc pair, which is a British pound against Swiss franc. Now, this is a pair that we did have last week looking for selling opportunities. And you can see the price did manage, or at least when we're discussing this market, it was within this particular buyer's area. The price did manage to break this area to the downside. But you can see as the price breached, it doesn't necessarily give us a very strong breach, but the price seemed to have been holding there for a very long time, or at least until Tuesday or Wednesday. That's when the market did manage to go down lower, especially if you look at the 1 hour time frame. It will look a lot more clearer, giving us evidence that the price is actually holding below that area. So the fact that we want to look for sells, you can see the price managed to get to some sort of buyer's area, and it seems to be struggling within this location. So right now, we do want to end up seeing how this pullback is going to come in. So right now, we're approaching at least some sort of seller's area where we could end up potentially seeing these selling opportunities coming in. But the one thing we need to be aware of, the fact that the price has gone towards this level, attempted to come down and has not managed to actually make a new low, one of two things can happen. We could end up entering into some sort of range between these two levels. So you could end up seeing the price possibly even just bouncing between these two areas. Alternatively, this area, or at least this seller's area, might not necessarily be good enough. So we might need to end up inciting a few people to look for buys. So if we do see the price possibly even coming all the way till this extreme area, could end up seeing a selling opportunity coming in within that area. Or if we do see the price giving us some sort of probe, well, either way, both of these situations will have incited people to start looking for buys. And at that point in time, we would be able to look for sells. Obviously, the higher place, or at least the higher sell, would be much better because that would give us a much bigger risk to reward and would have incited way more buyers. So the higher it goes, the higher, or at least it has a higher probability of actually even making new lows and breaking this area to the downside. So just take note of that, but at least that is the game plan of what we're looking at on the British pound against the Swiss franc. So let's see how these pullbacks come in. So hope that's clear on that pair as we look at the next Swiss franc pair that we did have last week, which is the Australian dollar against Swiss franc. Similar situation, and you can see the correlation. It seems like the pair started working on Tuesday. Once we did get a breach to the downside, the price was holding below, and we can see the market did manage to continue coming down lower. But midweek, we did end up getting a very deep pullback where the buyers did end up coming in quite aggressive. Now, these sellers seem to have pushed down, but it's a similar situation with the British pound against the Swiss franc. That right now, we could potentially see the fact that these sellers right here have attempted to come down low and they don't seem to have gotten any lower. Chances are we might need to end up giving us some sort of breach to the upside, where once it probes that area and holds below, we could end up looking for a selling opportunity. It could be a similar situation as we have discussed. We do end up getting the price coming all the way to this extreme. Similar situation to, I guess, what we had drawn last week even. We do end up getting the price possibly coming back to this major seller's area. We could end up looking for selling opportunities there. So right now, the fact that the pullback is coming in, don't necessarily look for sells. The buyers still look as if they're coming up, but do watch out for this first seller's area right here. So once if the price holds below within that area, you can look for sells. But if not, chances are we could be coming all the way to the extreme location. So I hope the game plan is clear. Similar kind of situation to what we're looking at last week as we move on to the last Swiss franc pair, which is the Canadian dollar against Swiss franc. So similar situation, brand new entry on our watch list. And we can see the correlation that did happen with the Swiss franc pairs. The prices came down. They did seem to find some sort of support and resistance area, and the buyers do seem as if they're coming up a bit aggressive. So right now, and they see this seller's area has attempted to come down low. They've not managed to come down. So there's a possibility either we could end up seeing some sort of reaction here, because maybe this is the slowdown of these buyers. Because remember, the buyers need to have some sort of slowdown, some sort of struggle before you could potentially see these selling opportunities coming in. So right now, if we do see something similar to this, where we see the market probing, then we should end up being able to find some very nice selling opportunities on this. But alternatively, if the price does end up holding above this SNR level, chances are we could end up coming all the way to this extreme location, or at least this extreme SNR. So if we do end up seeing some sort of probe or price action signal, hopefully within when there's a lot of high impact news, which we'll end up having a look at, as I did mention, but chances are we could end up finding some very nice selling opportunities at the top, but we'll wait to see how the market possibly reacts within this first area before we're able to look for selling opportunities within that location. So just because these sellers reacted and have just come down, but remember, these buyers here need to slow down. So if they are coming up a bit slower and you do see the sellers reacting from this location, there could be a very nice selling opportunity coming up. Yeah.
All right. So guys, I'll take a note of what the plan is, this one, and of course, all the Swiss franc pairs. So we mixed and matched up everything for the Swiss franc in terms of the buys and the neutrals. So before we look at the Q&A, just jumping over to the fundamentals real quick. Seems like there are quite a number of news activities this week, especially Wednesday and Thursday. Seems like it's going to be a pretty busy day. So make sure that you're on the lookout for that. Already there's been one high impact news event that's already been out for the Euros. Seems like it's bad. I don't know, Mitch. Maybe it could be the reason why the Euros are possibly also pulling back slightly. What do you think?
It's a possibility. Because, but we also have more Euro news on Thursday. So it's a possibility it could be reacting, right? Because it's looking weak.
Yeah, it's trying to pull back, but it's also definitely within regions of resistance. So it's also not something very uncommon. But I think on Thursday, especially with these interest rate decisions, there's definitely bound to be some fireworks for the Euros. So you definitely could watch out for that. You can also see that on Wednesday, also interest rate decisions for the US. So watch out at 9 p.m. Anytime there's FOMC, there's always bound to be fireworks on the USD pair. So you could watch out for that, as well as gold, silver, the guys who normally trade those as well. Make sure that you watch out for that, maybe even the Dow Jones. So make sure that you watch out for that. So it seems like Wednesday, Thursday, there's going to be a lot happening. And of course, quite a number of other high impact news events in between. But ideally, I think the ones that you really need to watch out for are this one, definitely this one right here. So make sure that you really, really do watch out for that. But of course, it doesn't mean that you should be scared to trade. Get opportunities, take them. Just make sure that you always stay within your risk and at all times and trade with a stop loss. So I think we can end up looking at the Q&A real quick. So I see Peter Njoroge, good to see you there. Saying, hi, Mitch, I joined late. Kindly repeat GBP yen. So let's see. So for this one, ideally, we're going to be trying to see whether we can get some buying opportunities. So hopefully, Peter, you can end up taking a screenshot of this. So we're going to be waiting to see whether we can get the market coming back up. If it does, let's see if the buyers can come up strong. Hopefully, if the market does end up slowing down on the pullback within here, we could look for the buys here. That's the first option. The other option is that we could wait and see whether we could get the price coming back in somewhere as close as possible within here. You can see that we're in some sort of a range. And the good thing about it is you can see that the sellers came down, buyers came up strong. Sellers slowed down even more than their previous attempt. Buyers came up even stronger in their previous one. So things are starting to look good. But in terms of location, you're still better off based on the fact that this is a range, looking for your buying opportunity somewhere as close as possible within here. But I also pointed out that there's a possibility price to just pull back in somewhere within here. So you could also read the story on the 1 hour time frame when price comes in somewhere as close as possible within here, is that starts to approach maybe the bottom half of this range, try and see what could possibly end up happening. So hopefully, Peter, you've taken note of that. And I see gifts there. Good to see you. And you're asking, hello, Mitch and team, joined late, kindly repeat KDN. So for KDN, this one we're trying to see whether we can get some buying opportunities. So hopefully you can end up taking note of this. Let me just clear the analysis that we had done last week so that it's not confusing. So ideally, we're trying to see whether we can get some buying opportunities on this one. So hopefully, gift, you can end up taking note of this 3 areas right here and what we're expecting. So in case the market pulls back in within here or somewhere as close as possible within here, try and see whether you can get your buys, especially if the market attempts to break to the downside, possibly taps these bars, comes up, pulls. Could look for your buy there with your stops here. On the way up, make sure that you watch out for these sellers right here. If you can't blast through that region to the upside, then there's possibly bound to be an issue and you could actually end up managing your trade somewhere within this area right here. But if we blast through, then I think we should be coming up to somewhere within that region. So that's the first option. The next one could be if the market pulls back in, hopefully comes in a bit deeper. It's somewhere within this area right here, and also somewhere within this region. More or less like some sort of an SNR on the 1 hour time frame where you could find the market possibly coming back in within there. So we could also possibly end up watching out for those more or less 3 areas and what the game plan is. So I hope that sorts you out, Gift. So I'm not seeing any more questions. I'm seeing Peter Joroga there saying thanks, karibu sana. So I guess that's pretty much it. Let's see how this week goes. But I don't know, Mitch. I know last week the CHS were the best performing players. Still a lot of strength we're expecting this week. Still a strong 7.
Yeah, but there might be pullbacks now because, at least the past 2 weeks, I think it's been showing a lot of strength. So, and not necessarily giving us much pullback. So we could end up seeing those pullbacks coming in this week. But the fact that we have a lot of high impact news, I think we could end up seeing a lot of volatility, which could give us some good opportunities. Yeah.
All right, so let's see how the week goes. So I hope that helps a lot of guys. So let's see how things go, and then we'll end up seeing when we end up doing the review next week on Monday. So hopefully you end up getting some good opportunities. And of course, remember, if you're struggling with your trading, you can always hit us up and we'll see how best we can end up helping you. I know that most of you do have our contact details, so feel free to reach out to us. Remember that the intermediate session 3 is going to be happening tomorrow evening, so you can end up also joining us for that. Also, remember, you can also bring in a friend if you want to. So I guess that's pretty much it from us. Unless there's anything else you want to add?
Yeah, nothing else. Yeah.
All right, so I guess we'll see you guys in the next episode. And of course, for guys watching this on YouTube, remember to like and subscribe, and also feel free to share and comment. So happy trading, guys. Happy swinging. See you in the next episode. Bye for now.